Good morning, everybody. First thing I'd like to do today is recap this past weekend in terms of high impact weather events, not only here in the United States, but around the world. And then what I want to do is I kind of want to unpack the front half of May before we get into a forecast. So the image you've been looking at here was from a powerful tropical cyclone that was in the Bay of Bengal between India and Southeast Asia. And this particular one, which was Category 5 in strength, was making its way toward, here on the day on Sunday, toward one of the most vulnerable places in the world for tropical cyclones to make landfall. I'm talking about Bangladesh and Myanmar. We're still waiting here on Monday morning to kind of know the true extent of the damage from this particular tropical cyclone, but I just wanted to show you what it looked like here on satellite. We also watched over the weekend as more wildfires were burning in parts of British Columbia and Alberta, and you can see the smoke here on satellite spreading across parts of Saskatchewan over to Manitoba. Most of the smoke is north of the Canadian Prairie, the very agriculturally productive region right in through here that stretches right into this area. But it is important to assess where that smoke is and know what the pattern is doing to create this. And the last satellite animation I want to show you is this one right here. And as we play this one, this is this deep cyclone that on Friday went out of parts of Colorado into Nebraska. Highly sheared environment produced numerous very large storms that not only ripped through parts of Nebraska and this side of Kansas, but all the way down into Oklahoma and Texas. And I'll make sure and put in the written report, the email today, some of the links to some of the videos that storm chasers shot from this. It was absolutely incredible. So this was the low. This low has since fizzled out, and it's going to be important later on this week for some precipitation across the east. But we're going to go into a little bit more of a quieter time period in terms of severe weather. But to show you what severe weathers look like, just this past weekend, take a look at these graphics here. Our first map goes back to the 12th, and you can see 44 reports of tornadoes, and it was mostly right there curling up with that low, stretching down here into parts of Texas. We also had some wind reports and some hail in the parts of the southeast. From there, let's go into the day on the 13th. And once again, another 21 reports of tornadoes. Iowa saw several, and you also saw a lot of severe weather in parts of Missouri and Illinois. And then getting into the Mother's Day on the 14th, that was another target area right in through here as we continue to watch this lingering boundary sit in this area, delivering some incredibly heavy rain, also causing some flooding. And so speaking of flooding, let's go take a look at the last 72 hours of total accumulated precipitation. And as you look at this, Texas hit hard this past weekend. Heavy rains that stretched to the north of that system I just mentioned to you. And a lot of isolated and scattered storms covering a large area, the Mid-South, the Tennessee, the Ohio Valley here. Now, when you look at this map, we tend to just see where the heavy precipitation was, but there were several places that with this very active time period, remember, which was primarily governed by southwest jet stream flow, were missed. And that's what I want to kind of discuss now as we look back here at the front half of the month of May. So this is just the last 2 weeks of percent of normal precipitation. And what I'm trying to identify is we've looked at the areas that were wet. Now take a look at this part of Oklahoma, Kansas, getting into Missouri. This particular part of Missouri had been consistently over forecast by all the models in terms of precipitation. They just continue to miss this. There are drier pockets in and around the Great Lakes. You get over here toward the Appalachian Mountains. And even though the end of April was very wet in this part of the Mid-Atlantic down to the Carolinas, the beginning of May has been quite dry in this region. Now, Florida's been quite dry, especially the southern tip after all of that incredibly heavy rain we saw earlier in the season. And the Southwest has been drier as well. But this is an area that I'm going to watch all week for a lot of convection to pop up on the mountains given the current jet stream setup. So let's take a look at this by comparing the beginning of the month soil moisture. This was May 1st, 16-inch or 40 centimeter soil moisture values. And again, there's that heavy rain that April finished with. Same to the north where we had the snow melt. But right in through here was the pocket we were going to try to watch to see fill in. So the latest 16-inch soil moisture data from NASA looks something like this. And now we can still see that one pocket that we just, despite forecasts suggesting better rains in this area, overall, we still did not make the full recovery, meaning that the upcoming forecast is critical for this area. So just wanted to highlight that. You can also see it when you look at the stats. This is month-to-date precipitation ranks by climate district. While parts of Colorado into Nebraska and then north of that into the Dakotas, some places here having an extremely wet start to the month. I just keep identifying these areas that are being missed with the current pattern. Let's flip this discussion over to temperature real quick and just show you what the month-to-date precipitation stats, temperature stats look like. And this map is a bit deceiving. And primarily that's because of the way the month of May started off so cold and then how it's flipped. I mean, this past weekend we were setting records in the Canadian Prairie and the Pacific Northwest with heat. In fact, there's still a heat advisory. Go take a look here, right here in and around the Puget Sound on the I-5 corridor, and also coming into the California Central Valley here. While we have all the heat still in the west, where this ridge is, we can see out here in the east, we've got frost advisories in the interior of Pennsylvania, New York, getting up to Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. And then also right here into parts of lower Michigan. So it's interesting. I got to rearrange this, but there's actually a freeze warning this morning underneath a red flag warning for later today, right here in this part of Michigan. Flood watch is still out for this part of Oklahoma. And you can see all of these polygons in through here representing where there is flooding going on right now. Okay. So here's the jet stream level winds that are set up for today. And what was important about this weekend was the cutoff of this low. That allowed more broader ridging to start to take shape across the Canadian Prairie. We still have a weak little shortwave here and another one coming into Mexico, while this high sits over parts of the southeast. And so because of this trough right here, this broader trough that's now just kind of stationary sitting, between Alaska and Hawaii, the flow this week is going to be dominated by a lot of heat west with some cooler conditions over parts of the east. But I want to show you where this is going. And this weekend, I found myself really looking a lot at this top-down view. This is typically the way that I analyze the weather before I focus it in on North America or the United States for you, because I need to see the whole pattern kind of connected here. And what I'm watching over this week is that we see a lot of low pressure sitting here over the Arctic, over Greenland. And that's one of the reasons why the pattern has been a bit more relaxed in terms of temperatures. But when we cut off this trough pattern here, this is what's let this big ridge come in. And that's what's got the trough over the east. And this is what's keeping the east colder than normal for this time of year. But as we play through this week and get out there toward Friday and into the weekend, we just continue to see a similar setup. So we went from southwest flow to now having northwest flow into this area. And that was the main story we talked a lot about last week, that we said we'll set up here for this third week of May. And in May, flow out of this direction is drier. It's also cooler. In summer, we get to summer, as I stated so many times, that's a pattern we love in summer if you're in the Midwestern United States or the Canadian Prairie or getting into the Eastern United States. But as we play this out there, what's important is that we see by the end of the third week of May and the start of the fourth week of May, we build this in, ridging into the Aleutian Islands, ridging trying over Scandinavia. And what that's going to do is that's going to open this pattern up here in the Gulf of Alaska, get rid of that deep trough that was cut off here, and start the flow coming back across the country doing something like this, which means the end of May could go back over quite active, the end of May. As it turns out, the next few days, today our severe weather risk, it's only marginal. We're watching this particular part of the country, but a lot of scattered convection throughout the mountains in the west and scattered storms through here. Tomorrow on the 16th, we'll keep an eye on parts of Tennessee, Kentucky over toward the Appalachian Mountains as this front sags in and stalls out here. I'll show it to you in a few seconds. And this is the day once we get into on Wednesday. So we'll watch the high plains, the western plains here. Large area of scattered storms, but drier into this part of the country. So let's take a look at it. High-res NAM model starting us off about 9 o'clock this morning. These rains could be critical. I'm talking about right here, light rain trying to move through parts of Missouri into that spot in Oklahoma and Kansas that needs it. And by the time we get into this evening, again, see how the little pockets of green here? These are all scattered storms being aided by that little shortwave that's tucked right into this part of the Pacific Northwest. As we play through Monday night, getting out to Tuesday morning, let's pause it right there. Possibly some rain coming through the Ohio River Valley. This is then getting through the day on Tuesday. There's that front sagging, and that's where we're going to watch on Tuesday evening for the risk of the strong to severe storms. This will bring some rain into Virginia, North and South Carolina, and the front will sag down here to the southeast as well. Behind it, some drier air. That's what's coming in with this high pressure cell. And a little clipper that's trying to run on this shortwave that did make it through the ridge that was over the western part of Canada. So scattered showers and storms in through here. Now, when we look at the full week ahead, this map is from the European model 0Z run today, and it's showing you the precipitation anomalies. So this includes some of the precip that was in this area last night, because this is 0Z run. The 12Z doesn't come out till later today. But this is our next 7 days in terms of precip compared to average. And we need to go have a look at it by comparing our models. GFS left, European right. Now we've seen through Monday now into Tuesday, and the high-res models took us out there to about Wednesday when that front cleared the Carolinas. Here's the clipper. It's in both models, going right through parts of Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and that's the one that drags the front right here by the time we get into Wednesday through the northern plains. Now, as that front comes through, it will cool things off later this week. Now, watch this system progress slowly, dragging a front through the midsection of the country. It's not a real heavy precip maker, but it does come through. It's very well represented in both models. And then with the high pressure that comes in behind this, there's going to be a shot at colder air coming in this weekend. We're going to assess that in a second. But remember, what do we end up getting out of this? You'll see lots of flashes of green here representing the convection, the ridging in the west, the broader troughing in the east. And this flow this time of year is drier, produces high pressure. So we just take this out about a week and that's what you see. When we get into the week 2 pattern, okay, we're kind of split a bit on the flow. So it's doing something like this. So drier northwest, drier into the Midwest, wetter down here in the Four Corners states. And this is critical because this is an area we do not expect to have a strong monsoon going into this summer. So you can see that's echoed in all 3 models. This will really promote the finishing of the planting of this crop. Now, when we look out there over the next 7 days at where our frost risk is, we see that it's in the interior of New England. And we have a couple of patches here in North Dakota. Now, we're not yet past, in this particular patch in North Dakota, we're not yet past the average last frost date. Okay, we still have frost in this area, and there's the chance that the overnight lows could touch the mid-30s. Now remember, when I make this map, it's a frost potential map. So what's shaded in gray is any location that gets down to at least 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Now 35 doesn't make a frost, but there could be some patchy frost as a result of this. It's just in a very limited location here. So I want to show you what the models are doing by starting you off here. This is Monday morning's temperature. So there's the freeze warning here, patchy frost in parts of New England. We go from Monday into Tuesday. These are overnight lows, by the way. There's Wednesday morning, getting out to Thursday. So there you go here in parts of New England on Thursday. And then as I told you, with that high pressure cell coming in, you start to see that these lows are down here in the mid to upper 30s. This is not a widespread event, according to the latest data here, but you can see the risk of some colder air. And again, that's primarily Friday morning. That's what we'll be watching. Going into the weekend, there's Saturday morning lows, getting into Sunday, nice cool Sunday morning here, but the heat is staying in the west. Now, I wanted to show you the probability on that Friday morning of getting a temperature below 40. So again, we're just going to watch, of course, New England here at the interior and right in through this section to get that potential to get down below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The ensembles being such low resolution, though, this is the probability of having a frost. So you see it's very low, but this is an issue with the ensemble. We're just going to keep a close eye on a couple of patchy areas in North Dakota. From here, 7 days, because of that cool air coming in, we're backing off in the accumulation of those heat units. Still, 60 to 90 down south, quite warm in the west, very, very warm. And the temperature pattern overall, because we're favoring more ridging west, looks like this. So this is a 5-day sliding window of average temperature anomalies. That's out there day 5 through 10, which would be the 20th through the 25th of May. And working our way now through the end of May, this is what we're seeing in terms of temperatures. So cooler bias south, warmer bias to the north. That's what the split flow is getting us. Last couple things. In tonight's in-depth report, we'll take a look at the longer range forecast from the CPC released on Friday. This is their expectations for the very end of May, the last few days of it, and the first 9 days of June. We'll see if this verifies with the European model. The European model, looking out at the month of June, opens up just a wide corridor in through here of a lot of thunderstorm activity, this whole area. We seem to talk about what's getting us there and what the latest is on this El Nino. And then finally, we'll cover South America again as well. And right now, what's important is we saw this in the models last week, but getting out there toward the end of this week, we are expecting storms to come to parts of Argentina. And if those storms can get far enough to the north into southern Brazil, I'm talking about hitting Rio Grande do Sul, hitting Paraná, and getting into Mato Grosso do Sul, this would be very, very important rainfall for the safrinha crop planted in this area. This hole you see here, though, is very common this time of year, and that's just where the monsoon is shut down. So I appreciate your extra attention this morning. Look forward to giving you a week of reports this week, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks.